Hello everyone. In this video, we shall start. We shall start with the Riemann integral. Right. So first, we shall define the notion of partition. So what do we mean by a partition? Let let a comma b be a given closed interval, or we'll call just an interval on R. Let a comma b be any closed interval on R. By a partition, by a partition, we denote it by P, capital P. By a partition P of the closed interval a comma b, we mean a finite set of points. It is a finite set of points denoted by x0, x1, x2, so on x1 n, such that x0 is nothing but a, so which will be less than or equal to x1, which will be less than or equal to x2, so on, less than or equal to xn minus 1, less than xn, which is b, So given a closed interval a comma b, so by a partition p means nothing but a finite set of points from a to b. So closed interval a comma b means we know that. So closed interval a comma b is actually set of all real numbers, from a to b. It contains all the real numbers from a to b. So among those real numbers, consider any finitely many real numbers. Then that finitely many real numbers frames a partition. So partition P of a closed interval a comma b is nothing but a set of finitely many real numbers from a to b. Suppose on the real line R, if this is the closed interval a comma b, then so I'll call this as x naught, then some numbers x1, x2, so on xn in between, and I'll call b as xn. Then the points x0, x1, x2, xn, xn minus 1, xn. So this collection forms a partition. So for example, so if I consider the closed interval 0, 1, the closed interval 0, 1. So one of the partition I can consider, which is, so 0 and 1, obviously I have to consider the first element and the last element. And in between you can consider any finitely many numbers. So I'll consider only 1 for if. You know that 1 by 2 lies in between. So I'll consider 1 by 2. Right? So this forms one partition. I can consider it as P1. So I can frame one more partition. For example, 0, 1 by 4, 1 by 2, 3 by 4, 1. So 0, 1 by 4, 1 by 2, 3 by 4, 1. So P2 is nothing but a finite set of real numbers from 0 to 1. So which will be another partition on 0. So like this, I can define one more, P3. 0, 1 by 8, 1 by 4, 3 by 8, 1 by 2, 5 by 8, 3 by 2, 7 by 8, 1. So which is also a set of finitely many real numbers, or it is a finite set of points from A to B. So it also forms a partition on the closed interval 0, 1. So partition on a closed interval a comma b is nothing but, by a partition p of closed interval a comma b is nothing but a finite set of points x0, x1, x2, xn, where x0 is nothing but a, xn is nothing but b, and rest of the points are intermediate points between a and b. So this is nothing but definition of partition and example, right? So next we shall note some of the points about the partition. So suppose now I'll start with the closed interval a comma b. So it is a closed interval on the real line R. Now, for this closed interval, I'll consider a partition. Right? Let P be any partition. So what will be partition of closed interval a comma b? It is nothing but any finite set of real numbers from a to b. Say it is x0, x1, x2, so on, xn. B, any partition on closed interval a comma b. Then according to our definition, what will be x0? It will be nothing but the first number. X0 will be less than or equal to x1, less than or equal to x2, so on, less than or equal to xn minus 1, which will be less than or equal to xn, which is nothing but b. Now, if I see their arrangement graphically, so what it will be? So A is nothing but x naught, B is nothing but xn. So after x naught, x1 comes in the order, next x2, next x3, so on like this, xn minus 1, next xn, right? Now we can observe, so using these finitely many points in between the numbers a and b, the whole closed interval a comma b can be subdivided into closed intervals. Say here from x0 to x1, x1 to x2, x2 to x3, x3 to x4. So like this, xn minus 2 to xn minus 1, xn minus 1 to xn. So if we consider any partition on some closed interval a comma b, so that partition contains numbers from a to b. So using those numbers or using those points, the closed interval a comma b can be divided into subintervals. How many subintervals? How many points we have considered? N plus 1 points, right? So x0 to xn. How many intervals I'll get? How many subintervals I'll get? So x0 to x1 is 1, x1 to x2 is 2, x2 to x3 is 3. Like this, xn minus 1 to xn will be n. So any partition P on a closed interval a comma b divides the closed interval a comma b into how many n subintervals, namely, which are those n subintervals? From x0 to x1 is the first, so x0 to x1, so next x1 to x2, next x2 to x3, so on like this, xn minus 1 to xn, the last subinterval. So they are n in number, 1, 2, 3, so on, n, right? So now we know how to calculate length of a closed interval. So length of a closed interval is nothing but the upper limit minus lower limit. So we shall denote the length of the ith subinterval. Ith subinterval. So how will be ith subinterval? So this is the first subinterval. This is the second subinterval. This is the third subinterval. So in the third subinterval, so this is x2, this is x3. That is, so the first index is 1 less than the number and the second index is equal to that number. So ith subinterval will be, so the first index is 1 less and the second index is xi. So we shall denote the length of the ith subinterval. So what is the length of the ith subinterval? Actually, it is the upper limit minus lower limit. So we shall denote it by delta xi. We shall denote it by delta xi. So we shall do it for all I. So how many intervals are there? N intervals are there. We shall do it for all the n intervals. Right? So for the first interval, the distance, that is the length of the interval is delta x1. For the second subinterval, the length is delta x2, like this. Now you can note that delta xi is in fact non-negative. Delta xi is non-negative. This is from the arrangement of x0, x1, x2, right? So you can observe here. So x0 is less than or equal to x1, x1 is less than or equal to x2, so on. So as they are arranged in the increasing order, so xi minus 1 comes first, then xi. So xi minus 1 will be greater than or equal to 0. So all the lengths of the subintervals are non-negative, right? So these are the observations on any partition. So next we shall come to the definition of the Riemann integral. Riemann integral. So to define the Riemann integral, we shall start with a function. Let f be a bounded function, moreover bounded real function, that is bounded real valued function defined on some closed interval a comma b. So that is, f is a real valued function defined on some closed interval a comma b, and they have given it is bounded also. So a function is bounded means, so we say that a function is bounded if its range is bounded. So you know what is the range. So actually f is a function from closed interval a comma b to r. So f actually maps closed interval a comma b to the real line r, right? So it is a function. So this function f is said to be bounded if the set of all images, which is called the range, is a bounded set. So a bounded function means a function is said to be bounded if the range of that function is bounded, right? So now f is bounded means the set of all images of f forms the range. That range set has to be bounded. So what is the range? It is the set of all images of elements of the domain. So for all x varying over the closed interval, if we consider f of x, So these forms the images, and set of all images forms the range. So these numbers has to be bounded. These numbers has to be bounded. So F is bounded means the images has to be bounded. So since F is bounded, there exists there exist exist real numbers. There exist real numbers, small m and capital M, such that the images are bounded below by small m and bounded above by capital M for all domain points x. Right? Okay. Now, so F is defined on some closed interval a comma b, right? So the domain of this function is closed interval a comma b. Now we shall consider a partition on that closed interval, right? Let what is a partition? You know that it is a set of some finite real numbers from a to b. So let p equals x0, x1, x2, so on xn minus 1, xn be any partition partition on closed interval a comma b. Be any partition of closed interval a comma b. So then p equals x0, x1, x2, xn minus 1, xn is a partition, means x0 is nothing but a, which will be less than or equal to xn, which will be less than or equal to x2, so on, which will be less than or equal to xn minus 1, less than or equal to xn, which will be b. And further, the partition p of the closed interval a comma b divides the closed interval a comma b into n subintervals, namely which are those, as we discussed earlier, the intervals are x0 to x1, x1 x2, x2 x3, so on xn minus 1, xn, where the length of the ith interval, so what will be the ith interval? It is xi minus 1, xi is, what is the length? So it is delta xi equals xi minus 1. So which is defined for all I running from 1 to n. There are n subintervals. For each subinterval, you can define its length denoted by delta xi, which is equal to the upper limit minus lower limit. Now we have observed that since f is bounded on the closed interval a comma b, right? F is bounded on closed interval a comma b means what? So f of x is less than or equal to capital M and greater than or equal to small m for all x varying over closed interval a comma b. That means all the images are bounded above by capital M and bounded below by small m. This is true for all x varying over closed interval a comma b, right? So we have f of x is less than or equal to small m and greater than or equal to small m and less than or equal to capital M for all x varying over the closed interval a comma b. So x can vary from a to b. But now using this partition, we have divided this closed interval into n subintervals. So what are those? So x0 to x1, x1 to x2, x2 to x3, like this, xn minus 1 to xn. So as f of x is greater than or equal to small m and less than or equal to capital M for all x varying from a to b, so the same holds for each of the subintervals. As x can vary from a to b, so just I'll vary x from x0 to x1, x1 to x2, x2 to x3, like this, xn minus 1 to xn. So that is, as f is bounded on the closed interval a comma b, it will be bounded on each of the subintervals. As each of these are subsets of the closed interval a comma b, so on each of the subsets also the same result holds, right? Then so f of x will be less than or equal to small m and greater than or equal to small m and less than or equal to capital M for all x varying over any ith interval xi minus 1 to xi, where I can be any value from 1 to m. So just it is a particular case actually. So this holds for all x from a to b. So it can vary from a to b. Now it just vary x from x0 to x1, x1 to x2, x2 to x3, like this in the middle, right? So now see, so if I consider the set of all numbers f of x for x varying from xi minus 1 to xi, right? So it is a set of real numbers. It is a non-empty set of real numbers which is bounded below and bounded above. So note that this forms a non-empty set of real numbers which is bounded. That is, bounded means bounded below and above. It is bounded below by capital M, bounded below by small m and bounded above by capital M. Now use the greatest lower bound property of R and the least upper bound property of R. So this is a non-empty set of real numbers which is bounded below. So by the greatest lower bound property of R, its infimum exists. So infimum exists for all these numbers. And by the least upper bound property, as it is a non-empty set of real numbers which is bounded above by capital M, so these numbers will have the supremum, that is least upper bound. Hence by greatest lower bound property and least upper bound property of R, infimum of all these numbers, infimum of all f of x as x varies from xi minus 1 to xi, and supremum of all f of x as x varies over from xi minus to xi. So supremum and infimum exists. So I'll call infimum as small mi, supremum as capital Mi. Right? Now, so Mi is the infimum, means it is the greatest lower bound. So Mi is the greatest lower bound for all these numbers. But M is a lower bound for all these numbers. So M is a lower bound and Mi is a greatest lower bound. So what will be the relation? So any lower bound will be less than or equal to the greatest lower bound. Right? And now Mi is the infimum of all these numbers. capital Mi is the supremum of all these numbers. So that is, so Mi will be first of all lower bound. So that is My will be less than or equal to f of x for all these x values. And as capital Mi is the supremum, it will be greater than or equal to f of x for all these x values. So what it shows, small mi will be less than or equal to capital Mi. And now, and what is capital Mi? It is the supremum of all these f of x values. That is, it is the least upper bound. And by this relation, m is an upper bound. So m is the upper bound, Mi is a least upper bound. So any upper bound will be greater than or equal to least upper bound. And I can argue this for any I. For any I. So here, what we have all discussed from here, what we have discussed here. So here I is arbitrary, so I can argue this for any I value from 1 to n. Okay. Now we shall define two values. One is L of P comma F. So we shall define it to be summation Mi into delta Xi. I running from 1 to n. And U of P comma F to be capital Mi into delta Xi. Right? So till here, as we argued for any arbitrary I, so we can argue for each I value. So I is equal to 1, we can argue. I is equal to 2, we can argue. I is equal to 3, I is equal to 4, like this. So for I is equal to 1, M1, that is small m1 and capital M1 will exist with this property. For I is equal to 2, small m2, capital M2 will exist with this property, like this. So we'll get M1, M2, M so on, Mn, and capital M1, capital M2, so on, capital N. So using those numbers and using these lengths of the subintervals, define two numbers LP, comma F, L of P comma F and U of P comma F. So the numbers L of P comma F, or it is called LPF. So you can, in short, you can call it as LPF and UPF. So these numbers are called the lower Riemann sum and upper Riemann sum of F with respect to partition P of A comma B. So the numbers LPF and UPF are called lower Riemann sum and upper Riemann sum of F with respect to P of A comma B, where what is P? Where P is any partition of the closed interval A comma B, right? So just we shall write once again what is LPF. It is the sum small mi into delta xi, I running from 1 to n, and UPF, U of P comma F. It is summation capital Mi into delta xi, I running from 1 to n. Right? So these are the definitions of lower Riemann sum and upper Riemann sum. Right? So now we shall continue. Once again, we have Mi is less than or equal to capital Mi. So this is greater than or equal to M, and this is less than or equal to capital M. So already we have this. So for all I running from 1 to up to n. Now, So note that so we have defined the length delta xi to be xi minus 1, which will greater than or equal to 0 for all I running from 1 to up to n. So as delta xi is a non-negative quantity, so multiply this inequality by delta xi. Hence the inequality remains the same, that is m into delta xi less than or equal to mi into delta xi less than or equal to capital Mi into delta xi less than or equal to m into delta xi, which is true for all I running I from 1 to up to n. Right? So now I can have this inequality for all the I values from 1 to n. So for each I value, I'll get a inequality of this type. So how many I values are there? There are n I values. So correspondingly, I will get n inequalities of this form. So now add all those inequalities. That is summation m delta xi I running from 1 to n will be less than or equal to summation mi delta xi I running from 1 to n summation capital Mi delta xi I running from 1 to n less than or equal to summation m delta xi I running from 1 to n, which is true for all I running from 1 to up to n. Sorry. So for all I considering these inequalities, so we have added those because for any I value, these numbers are always less than or equal to these numbers. So adding all those values corresponding to all the I values, so will be less than or equal to adding all these numbers for all I values. So these sums will be in this way, right? Now in the first summation, so it is constant. You can take it outside the summation. In the last also, you can take it outside the summation. So m into summation delta xi, I running from 1 to n less than or equal to summation mi delta xi, I running from 1 to n less than or equal to summation capital Mi delta xi I running from 1 to n less than or equal to m into summation delta xi. Right? Now observe carefully what these two are. What are these two? So this is nothing but LPF, and what is this? It is nothing but UPF. That is, this is nothing but the lower Riemann sum of F with respect to the partition P of A comma B, and this is nothing but the upper Riemann sum of F with respect to the partition P of closed interval A comma B. So LPF is less than or equal to UPF, which is greater than or equal to M into, so summation delta xi. So what is summation delta xi? So actually how summation is, you know that. Summation delta xi, I running from 1 to n means what? It is delta x1 plus delta x2 plus so on delta xn. So summation delta xi from I to n means I have to add all delta xi's from I running from 1 to n. So delta x1 plus delta x2, so on delta xn. So what is delta x1? So according to our definition, for any I, delta xi is xi minus xi minus 1. So delta x1 means x1 minus x naught. Delta x2 means x2 minus x1. Like this. So on. So previously it will be a delta xn minus 1. So what it will be, delta xn minus 1 means it is xn minus 1 minus xn minus 2 plus delta xn means it is xn minus xn minus 1. Now you can observe minus x plus x1 minus x1 plus x2 minus x2 like this, plus xn minus 1 minus xn minus 1. So this will be cancelled with plus xn minus 2. So what is remaining? Xn minus x naught, xn minus x naught. But according to our definition, xn is what? It is nothing but the upper limit, x naught is the lower limit a. So summation delta xi is nothing but b minus a. So m into b minus a is less than or equal to the lower Riemann sum less than or equal to the upper Riemann sum less than or equal to m into b minus a, where P is any partition, P is any partition of closed interval a comma b. So if we consider any partition P of closed interval a comma b, so lower Riemann sum and upper Riemann sum satisfy this inequality. So this is the observation which you have to note. Right? So next we come to the real definition. So we define the lower Riemann integral of f over the interval a comma b denoted by like this, f dx from minus a to b as. So how we define it? So lower Riemann integral of f over the interval a comma b is defined to be supremum of all lower Riemann sums of f over any partition P of a comma b, where the supremum is taken over all partitions P of a comma b. So using these lower and upper Riemann sums, now we are defining lower Riemann integral, and next we will define upper Riemann integral. Okay, so first of all, lower Riemann integral of f over the interval a comma b is defined to be supremum of all lower Riemann sums of f, where the supremum is taken over all partitions P of a comma b. So this means so for each partition P of a comma b, so calculate the lower Riemann sum. So as I explained earlier in the definition of partition, while giving examples on a closed interval, you can define many partitions. Any partition is nothing but a set of finitely many points from A to B. So you can define plenty of partitions on a given closed interval. So consider all possible partitions on a closed interval a comma b. What all the partitions you can do on a closed interval a comma b, with respect to each of those partitions, calculate LPF. Right? Then consider all those values. After calculating lower Riemann sum, LPF, with respect to each partition P of a comma b, such that P is a partition of A comma B. So consider the set of all lower Riemann sums of F with respect to all partitions of A comma B. So then this set, so LPF is what? It is actually a real number. It is actually a real number. And on a closed interval A comma B, you can consider at least one partition. So what could be that one partition? So if this is the closed interval A comma B, so consider B minus A by 2. B minus A by 2 or B plus A by 2. That is the mean. So by considering the partition A, B plus A by 2, B. So this becomes one partition. So that shows that you can consider at least one partition on a given closed interval. So this set of all lower Riemann sums, is first of all non-empty, and all lower Riemann sums are nothing but real numbers. So it is a non-empty set of real numbers. And by this inequality, you can observe that so all lower Riemann sums are always bounded above by m into B minus E. So that shows this is a non-empty set of real numbers bounded above by capital M into B minus A, right? So consider this set of all lower Riemann sums, then it forms a non-empty set of real numbers bounded above by m into B minus A. So as it is a non-empty set of real numbers bounded above, so by the least upper bound property of R, by the least upper bound property of R, supremum of all lower Riemann sums exists. So supremum exists, and that supremum is nothing but defined as the lower Riemann integral, right? So the lower Riemann integral of F over the closed interval A comma B is defined to be supremum of all lower Riemann sums calculated for all the partitions of A comma B, right? So which actually exists. So as the supremum of all lower Riemann sums exist, the lower Riemann integral of F or any closed interval will obviously exist. So now we shall define the upper Riemann integral. We define the upper Riemann integral of F over the interval A comma B, denoted by the symbol f dx from A to minus B. So this is the notation for the upper Riemann integral, and we define it to be, so upper Riemann integral of F over the closed interval A comma B is defined to be infimum of all upper Riemann sums. Infimum of all upper Riemann sums, where the infimum is taken over all partitions of A comma B, right? So once again, so what we will do is, to calculate the upper Riemann integral, what we have to do is, for each partition P of A comma B, calculate the upper Riemann sum. So with the formula capital Mi into delta xi, capital Mi into delta xi. So do this for each partition P of A comma B. So as I earlier told, on a closed interval A comma B, you can consider plenty of partitions. So with respect to each partition, calculate the upper Riemann sum. Then collect all those Riemann sums. Collect all those upper Riemann sums. So consider the set of all upper Riemann sums with respect to each partition P of A comma B. Then this set forms a non-empty set of real numbers, bounded below by small m into b minus a. So you have to observe our previous inequality here. So for any partition P of A comma B, the upper Riemann sum is always bounded below by m into b minus a. So for this set of all upper Riemann sums, m into b minus a forms a lower bound. So as it is a non-empty set of real numbers bounded below by greatest lower bound property of R, so infimum of this set exists. That is, infimum of all upper Riemann sums exists. And that infimum is nothing but defined to be the upper Riemann integral. Right? So this is the explanation for existence of infimum. Right? So thus, the lower Riemann integral of f over the closed interval A comma B is defined to be supremum of all lower Riemann sums, and the upper Riemann integral of f over any closed interval A comma B is defined to be infimum of all upper Riemann sums. So, and we can observe that both exist. Supremum of all lower Riemann sums exist and infimum of all upper Riemann sums exist. So thus given any bounded real valued function on a closed interval A comma B, a lower Riemann integral and the upper Riemann integral will always exist, right? Will always exist. Thus, given any bounded real function f on some closed interval A comma B, the lower Riemann integral lower Riemann integral of f over the closed interval A comma B and the upper Riemann integral over the closed interval A comma B always exist. They always exist. Now, using the existence of the lower Riemann integral of f and the upper Riemann integral of f over the closed interval A comma B, we further define the Riemann integral. If the lower Riemann integral of f over the closed interval A comma B is equal to the upper Riemann integral of f over the closed interval A comma B, then we say that f is Riemann integrable. F is Riemann integrable on A comma B. So this is the definition of Riemann integrability of a bounded real valued function. So given a bounded real valued function f, we say that f is Riemann integrable. If the lower Riemann integral is equal to the upper Riemann integral. And obviously by our previous observations, lower Riemann integral and upper Riemann integral will always exist, and their equality will imply that f is Riemann integrable on closed interval a comma b. And in this case we write f belongs to R, where we take R to be the set of all Riemann integrable functions. And further, so as in this case, the lower Riemann integral is equal to the upper Riemann integral. So we denote the common value as the integral of f over the closed interval a comma b. So whenever the lower Riemann integral and the upper Riemann integral are equal, we say f is Riemann integrable, and the common value is taken as the Riemann integral of f over the closed interval a comma b. So this is the definition of the Riemann integral of a bounded real valued function. In the next video, we shall see some of the examples for Riemann integrable functions and how we will calculate the Riemann integral.